Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to episode 3. We have a very special guest. We have our former coach, Coach Corey Brueggeman on. Well, we're here with our second guest, a very special guest to us, head coach at Manchester University for the men's soccer team, Coach Corey Brueggeman. How are we doing today, Corey?
We are doing well, thank you.
It's good. So we'll start off by getting a little bit into your background and kind of getting to know you a little bit better. Can you kind of talk us about your path from majoring in sport management and then how it kind of transitioned into coaching a little bit?
Yeah, so I went to Manchester College. I think we were the last class to graduate under the college title. And while there, I sort of navigated through many different, I guess, academic studies trying to figure out what I wanted and ended up with sport management. When I was in high school, I think I coached a little bit from the youth side. And then as I got to the collegiate ranks, when I was playing for Coach Good, he allowed me to basically take 2 springs off to go and coach at Columbia Springs Middle School, Indian Springs Middle School, and that's in Columbia City. And that's kind of where I started to feel like coaching could be something I wanted to do. And I think both of you know that's where I met Drake. That's where I met Brandon when they were super young, and I was only a sophomore and a junior in college. And so coaching started to become a really interesting idea. And as I finished, my undergrad and was exploring options with the Columbus Crew, Coach Good called me and said, "Hey, we're gonna have an opening for the assistant position, and you're allowed to come back if you wanted." So that's kind of how it ended up, and I've been there ever since. I think going on 8 years now total, coaching at Manchester, and 5 years as head coach. So it's been pretty
You've
crazy.
got the Arsenal jacket on, and like you've been in and around soccer like your whole life. Like, how did you get into soccer? Like, what made you passionate about soccer?
Yeah, so I like to blame it on my brother. I think that my father coached our kind of rec leagues growing up, and he'll tell stories about my brother and I. We'll go out and score 15 goals a game in a rec league, and it's not impressive at all. It's just the area that we came up. There wasn't a ton of high level soccer initially in the Mainville, Morrow, Ohio areas. And I think as we started to get older, I was into basketball and soccer, and then I started to realize my brother was kind of taking off in the soccer ranks. He was a really high level goalkeeper. And that's when I just kind of decided I think soccer is my focus. Travel soccer for Ohio Elite became a real big passion of mine. And I wasn't even that great. Like, I was still trying to grow and become a better player, and somehow ended up getting the opportunity to play in college. And I think my love for soccer really started to develop like once I finished. I think if I think about my top playing days, I would say after college. And I think about, as I fell in love with Arsenal, it was 2011, 2010, and all the way, now for a decade. But yeah, soccer was always part of the picture, but I don't think it was the picture when I was growing up. If that helps explain a little bit about it.
So through your playing career, who would you compare yourself to? Like, who would be a player comp, modern day player that you would kind of compare your style to?
I struggle to understand this because what I call myself is different than what like Dion would call me or some of my teammates would call me. Because I texted him a couple weeks ago, and so for the viewers, listeners, Dion Radev is a Bulgarian attacker who was playing with me, and I always had an image of how he and I connected. So I texted him. I said, "Are you Bruno and I Pogba, or am I Bruno and you're whoever he's passing the ball to?" And he said, "We're none of those people." And I'm like, "Okay, that makes sense." But I have no idea in terms of what aspects. Like, I always loved being a pretty dynamic midfielder. So I love how KDB plays. I don't think I'm as good as KDB, but if I had to pick, I'd say Yaya Toure when he was motivated. I think that's what I want to get, because towards the end of the City days, he was not enjoying it. So that's the shortest answer I can give you on that subject. It's still trying to figure it out. If I could find more film, then maybe I could help myself understand
better. You always talked about, like, when we were playing with you, how you would give anything to go back and play, and you really miss playing in a lot of ways. What was your favorite moment that you think back to now about as a player? So like, is there one thing, or maybe like a year that you really miss, or a game that you recollect, I guess?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just so difficult. I think the biggest thing, at least from my Manchester days, was just the friendships that I created, and that's honestly the biggest thing that I see, obviously with you two and with a lot of our returners and even some of the young alumni that we have. I just have so many stories about alumni, like some of my friends that, happen on the bus or happen, as we're leaving places or happen in games. And so just different things can kind of pop up. Favorite playing moment, like I love my senior year of high school was probably one of my favorite years. We took a really struggling program and we went undefeated for half a season. And I think I finished in the top 3 in the city in scoring. And so that was really cool. Senior year of college, we went down to Hanover. You guys know what it's like playing at Hanover. They weren't as talented back then, but they were still the similar, frustrating crowd and or people to play against. We go down 2-0, and I just remember this kid standing at the top of the bleachers, just like just screaming, "You guys are blank. You don't deserve to be here. Go home." And like I am jawing back and forth with this guy, and Coach Frizzo is just like, Corey, like focus. You're a captain. You can't be going through this. And I'm like Frizzo, if you don't shut him up, like I'm gonna lose my mind. And so finally, the kid is John. I think like 10 minutes left in the game. Get a through ball. I think it was to Andrew Gray. Maybe I think it popped. I don't remember how I got it. He scored a goal. And then as this happened, like I realized that their left back was literally the worst player I've ever seen at the collegiate level. And so I just hung out near him the last 5 minutes of the game. Dion got a goal, took it to overtime, got a throw in. I opened up and scored back post and just ran straight to the kid and was about to shush him. And as I'm doing that, my teammate, John Lash, just wipes my legs out. And so I'm like spinning and I dead fish in the middle of the field and just lay there until I just couldn't move. Like I was in so much pain that I was sprinting to shush this guy. And as we got up, he was gone. He disappeared. So that is one of my favorite, definite images that's in my head. Man, just you guys know what it's like to be at Hanover and to actually, go down 2-0 and come back 3 goals in 15 minutes.
What would Coach Good have thought of the shushing there? What do you?
He would have been for it. I think he would have been for it. Coach Good he's a competitor. He's certainly a very humble man, and he wants to have obviously a lot of grace about what he does, but there's a competitive side to him that I think would have been fine with that as long as it didn't go any further than just a reminder of what we're trying to do.
So you've kind of mentioned how you've played with some pretty talented people. Or is there any one person that you played with or played against that you're like, man, that's the best player that I've ever played against or stepped on the field with?
Yeah, so it's crazy at the college level at Manchester. I'd say Chris Rowe would definitely be the top player, and I don't even know if you guys have seen C. Rowe play at all. So he was a senior when I got into Manchester, and just he's 2 or 3 inches taller than me. He's so much faster than me, and he's just an incredible player. I don't know how he ended up at Manchester, but he's probably the most complete player I've seen in a really long time at our level. Andrew Bigelow, you guys have seen Biggs come back and play a little bit. He's now, a professional referee. It's hard to see him in his prime, and I didn't even really see him in his prime besides the annual alumni games. So I would say for Manchester, those are the 2 that I got to see quite a bit. I think Chris ended up with all region honors, and I think Biggs did as well. And then played against would be, I don't remember his last name, but Rose Holman had a 6'6" striker who was my age, Clint Vanderrood or something like that. It's insane. To have, first of all, that size and then to match it with speed and power. I want to say he had 20 to 25 goals his senior year. I hands down have not seen a striker with that ability in a really long time. Now we did beat them once, and I did mark him on every corner, but he was insane. And I did mention that once I finished at Manchester, I went to Columbus, and when I was in Columbus, I played in the men's league there. I didn't realize how insane men's leagues were until I got there. So I am in a midfield trio of a guy who got drafted by the New England Revolution, and then national champions, Division III national champs that played for Otterbein. And so I'm just all right, this is, I elevated to a whole new level. Jason Griffiths is the current Otterbein head coach, but he played for Kentucky and was drafted by the Revs. And I have not played with a player at his level in a really long time. I've trained with some of the guys at IU, kicked the ball around with, Mazanov or some of those guys in some of the IU camps. But Jason at that level, at that age, he's insane. He's probably still a very, very high level player.
So you kind of talked about how you went to Columbus. And from my knowledge, like you worked for the Crew for a little bit. Is that right? Like what was your role there?
It is correct. Yep. So Dr. Ryan Hedstrom, as you guys know, helped me to basically try and secure any internship that I could find. And I started reaching out, asking for jobs with, I think it was the Bengals, the Reds, the Crew, and then some other regional areas. And the Crew came back and said, hey, we're going to have this team called the Crew Action Team. And what it was is this group that is just designed to increase promotions before games. So they're mostly college kids walking around with soccer balls, fake tattoos and the blowhorns and t-shirts and everything you can to just kind of keep the crowd engaged. And so from March of my senior year, I started driving back and forth to Columbus. I mean, there was one night where I finished class at 3, game was at 7. I drove, 3.5 straight there, got there, ran the promotions, drove straight back. And I have never been more tired and so, tired of seeing 114 in my life. Just the longest drive, and it's like 6 turns because you get, Columbus and North Manchester is not a bad drive, but it's just really long. And so that role, Crew Action Team, sort of developed into like, hey, I need more hours. What can I do more of? And they started to give me more office work. They started to, let me do some data input for surveys or, fan research or, demographic research of what the fans are doing, what they're buying, what they're not buying, that type of stuff. And then finally, I think they got to a point where my boss was ready to kind of take on bigger things. And so she transitioned me to take over the lead for that team. And so I became kind of like the organizer of where people should be, what they should be doing. The only reason I say I was the organizer is because I had a walkie-talkie. That was, that's what made me the supervisor for that day. But it led to some just really awesome experiences. I had a couple, in interaction with high-level MLS players and Crew alumni like Frankie Haydick. I was able to, one of my other favorite memories is I did the in-game promotions announcing for the Ohio mascot soccer game. And it's as weird as it sounds, it's every Ohio mascot, college and professional playing a soccer game. And I'm just announcing like, and Rosie Redlegs now, slides in for the tackle. And it's just like, oh, okay, man, how did I get here? But it was such a rewarding experience. And I want to say, like, at the end of my time there, it was either a seasonal job, which would have been really good, and I probably could have developed into something else, or the coaching, opportunity came up. And I still go back and forth. Some days I regret not sticking with it and not staying in the Crew and seeing where that would have gone. I had some friends who were in ticket sales or PR. That one of them is now with Austin FC. A couple of them, went to Sporting Kansas City, and so it always is in my mind. But I've been happy with the transition.
When you emceed for that, was that in front of like thousands of people? Or like how did they get you that position there? Were you like not wanting to do that, or was that something you were excited about?
Yeah, so I I put that I was the MC for Midnight Madness on my resume, and apparently people look at your resume. I was the MC for Midnight Madness. I am comfortable public speaking, but the role that basically they needed it started because I believe a Fox Sports correspondent or a host for Columbus Crew didn't show up to an event. We're at the freshman orientation for Ohio State, and she just doesn't show up. I'm there to shoot a t-shirt cannon. That's it. That's my role. And my boss, Dan, comes up to me and says, hey, got a problem. So-and-so's not coming. I know on your resume you were an MC for a few events in college. He goes, do you think you're ready to do this? And I'm just like, ready to do what? Like, what do you need me to do? He's like, you're gonna be the color commentary or co-anchor, co-host with Frankie. And I'm just like, no, I'm good. Like, I'm fine with what I'm doing. And I'm like, first of all, how many people are there? And I don't know what the freshman class of Ohio State is, but it was the most people I've ever seen in a gymnasium in my entire life. And yeah, I remember saying no like 7 times, and then somehow a shot of tequila appeared, took a shot of tequila, got on stage with Frankie Haydock, and that was it. Killed it. And from then, I think they started to push more and more that way. And so it actually helped because when I moved into that position as well, it removed someone from that and gave them, obviously they were more experienced in some other roles to help the concourse or help the pregame promotions. And so I would be the one now who would take over the pregame announcing. So, last chance to get your tickets, last chance to do this, go to different places. And I think the height of when I was announcing was, we had like 24,000 fans at a game. And so it's kind of cool if you think about it. It's also, pretty terrifying, but they trusted me to a certain extent. And that, in any job or organization or relationship, to feel trusted is the greatest thing in the world. To just have free reign to say, yep, we trust you. Here's the script. Make sure you hit it. And it was really cool. Absolutely loved it. It's such a weird development of like, I started out as just this crew action person, and that doesn't even exist anymore. They've kind of changed everything. And then it went to, media and relations and promotions and announcing, and here I am.
Yeah, so that kind of ended up, Coach Good came calling, and I think you mentioned that it was a tough decision, but I think it's hard to say no to Coach Good when he comes knocking. And so kind of talk about your time as being Coach Good's assistant and how that maybe prepared you to be the head coach you are now.
Yeah, so I'd always said, I don't know if I was serious, but I always said, hey, if anything comes up, just let me know. And I'd even told Frizzo that, Steve had been there for over 10 years as Dave's assistant. And so they had a really strong connection. And the connection that I had with Coach Good was just as strong. I think if you guys would have gotten to know him better, he is such a great man and such a great coach. And one of the strongest, things he leads with is his character. There's nothing that he will keep from you. He'll make sure he's honest with those, tough decisions that he has to make. And he's always super invested. I mean, my mom still has letters from Coach Good in the summer. We'll send out the generic, hey, here's move-in date, here's what's going on. And then he'd handwrite in the margins, just an entire paper. Hey, I can't wait for you to come back. I hope you and Brittany are doing well. Is there anything that Lois and I can do for you when you get here? Please don't hesitate. And it wasn't just me, like every player that I know of got that handwritten letter. It was motivation, it was encouragement, it was support. And it was just, to have somebody care about you that much at that stage in your life, it makes a difference. And so when I came back as the assistant, I had an idea of where the struggles were. I had an idea of, some things that could be changed. And, Coach Good at that time had been there for 32 years, 31 years, being one of the most tenured coaches, not only just in our conference in Division III, but in the nation. I just saw some things that I think we could try and do differently. And I remember calling a couple alumni and just saying, hey, what are things that you would have changed? Like if you had the chance to, what are things that you would have changed? And we started brainstorming. I talked to Chris Rowe. I said that a little bit. I talked to, a little bit about him as a player. I talked to a few other young alumni and I just said, what are some things that you would have wanted to change? And like you guys have friends who played collegiately elsewhere, you're always somewhat comparing, or you'll find time to compare, and it's hard not to. And so I took a list of that, and right away, the biggest thing, as I mentioned with the crew, is I think Dave just trusted me to do what needed to be done. The hard part was that I didn't know what I was doing. And so, as a young coach, I just tried to play as much as possible. And that's probably not the best. But my biggest thing for them was if I wanted them to do something that I couldn't really teach yet because I didn't have the tools to, then I just had to show them. And I had to show them over and over, if you're a defender and you need to give space, well, I'm going to go in and play as hard as I can as an attacker against you to show you why you need to back off or why you need to get closer. And through that, I started to develop better ways of, teaching the technical side of things. I started to steal ideas and gain new ideas tactically and try and figure that out. And I think eventually Coach Good just was like, keep going. Like you're doing great. The guys are buying into what we're doing. And, one of my favorite moments was when we were playing Ohio Northern, and in the history of our program, we've never beaten Ohio Northern, and that is not celebrated, but it's a known fact. But Coach Good always kept them on the schedule, and I hated playing them. I just, you get to a point where you get beat so many times that you're just like, Can we try another team? Can we try, somebody similar caliber? Let's just move on. And we ended up, this was just me watching film. And this is kind of when I started to get confidence in my ability. But we saw that they did something with their center backs where just basically 2 center backs hung out and everybody else went forward, and they threw a lot of numbers in the attack. And at this time, I was like, Dave, I think we can tell Ola just to sit right here. And if we can win the ball and get the ball to Ola, he can get down in the box, do 7 scissors or 7 step overs, throw a shimmy shake, and either finish or get fouled. And lo and behold, that happens. We go up 1-0, we park the bus, do what we need to do, sit back. And I think they ended up scoring, 2 goals late. And, to me, though, to even have a close game with the Ohio Northern at that time, like just started to it just changed a little bit of the mindset. And that's, when I say it out loud right now, it kills me because it's like, you shouldn't be celebrating a 2-1 loss against a really, really good team. But when I started to realize that, we could find these little tweaks or weaknesses or tactics, then I started to get a lot more confidence in what we were doing. And I think Dave saw the same thing too. And I don't know if he was never reluctant to change, but I think I came in at a really good time to start pushing new ideas. But we struggled. I mean, we were 3-14, 3-12-3. We had some of our worst years in my first few years as an assistant coach, and it was pretty hard.
How did you manage to keep the faith, I guess, that your techniques and the coaching staff's techniques was what you wanted to accomplish, and not going down the wrong path? And how did you continue to develop as a coach, do you think?
Yeah, as you guys know, when you're not producing results, it's hard to keep confidence. It's hard to keep faith. And very similar to your freshman year, where we had a pretty big, talented class. I mean, that was my first goal as an assistant, and I will still say it, my goal every year is to out-recruit our current players. I want to make sure that they feel our backing, that we are invested in them, but they have to continue their level of progress, so that when I bring in a first year, that first year is going to be like a first year. If they're talented, then they're talented. If they're, super fit and can play, great. But your progress each year should be able to trump most of those most times. And my first year as an assistant coach, I don't remember who told me. I think it might have been the assistant baseball coach, where he just says every year, my job is to find a better you. That's it. And so I got that, my first year as an assistant coach, I think we brought in around 15, 20-ish. And so they, initially the mix was hard because I think we had just a different culture. We had a lot of guys who struggled to want to compete. We had a lot of players who didn't like bringing recruits on campus because those recruits were direct threats. We just had a hard time. And when you're not winning, right, that adds to just a ton of frustration. And hard part for me was, and a hard part for any assistant coach, is the assistants are usually closer. They're more on that ground level of the communication flow, how players are actually feeling, all these things that head coaches miss. And even now, there are some things that Coach Brooks is more privy to than I know. And I think that's how most relationships with coaching works. But as the assistant coach in that time, I started just to hear hey, this coach could retire. Can you change this? Can you do this? And what the guys didn't know is that a lot of those decisions were being made together. A lot of the blame, Dave would take it, but he would give me free rein to say, hey, yeah, let's try this formation. Let's try this tactic. Let's try this training session. And I think the hardest part was we just had a really difficult time getting a handle on the culture. We had so many different backgrounds, so many different character problems that we couldn't solve it, and we struggled to solve it. And I think one of the best quotes I have read recently was to fire quickly and hire slowly. So if you have somebody in your culture who is just an absolute disruption, and it's a disruption, to remove them quickly. And you guys both know that I have struggled to do that. And that is, part of all of the goodness I saw in Dave is we would hold on to people. Even when I was a player, we would hold on to people on the team that character-wise shouldn't have been there. And eventually that became detrimental to our success, whether it was in training, whether it was off the field. whatever. And I'm still under the belief that those players will run their own course, but they still can have a major impact on what happens in the team dynamic. So to wrap it up, I loved working with Coach Good. Absolutely. I wouldn't be here without his trust, his guidance, learning from him. But I still think there were a lot of things that I could have done better as an assistant coach.
Yeah, and to speak to the culture, I think that's something that we focused on a lot during our 4 years with you, and I think that's something that you definitely took emphasis on as you became the head coach there. I think that's an often overlooked piece. I think a lot of times it's just looked at skill, but it does matter the culture, and I think that you've done a good job of establishing kind of the culture that you want there. Um, so why do you enjoy coaching? What does coaching do for you?
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a the best way to describe it. There are very few professions. There are very few professions that I'm aware of that one day you can just have the absolute highest high, and within 12 hours or even 2 minutes have the absolute lowest low. I go back to playing Hope at Hope, getting absolutely just embarrassed, and then going to Calvin and playing well for 30 minutes and having just the lowest feeling of my life returning home. I go to losing to Defiance at home, to then beating Rose Holman at home. Like, I can't explain the roller coaster of that coaching takes you through. And you guys know as players, it can happen. What coaching does for me, though, is it gives me the platform that I've always wanted to make an impact with a group, whether that's student athletes, whether that is certain educational areas. I've always felt that I would want to be involved somehow with kids, whether that is at the college level, at the youth level, or younger, and I want to try and be some sort of an impact for them, because I had a few coaches that did the opposite for me when I was growing up. So there's no like general philosophy why I got into coaching or what it really does for me. But, I use server as an example. People ask me what are some of my favorite memories of coaching. And like, I go back to beating Transy, and the idea of beating Transy was actually it's so much better than when we actually beat Transy, right? Because you achieve what you want to achieve. And then it's just like, all right, what now? You start to think about that. But watching Serber be, in this position he was for the last few years, and then just come alive and score a few goals at the end of last year after, not being ready and then being ready. We're at Anderson. Gonzo suffers with his knee injury. Serber gets in and scores a goal and comes over and just gives me a huge hug. Like, that to me means so much more than beating Transylvania. That to me means so much more than any victory. And there are thousands of those. Like, Noah, I remember so many times you being frustrated, and you too. But no, I remember, a not so great incident at during a Transylvania game, and you come off the field and they go, "What happened?" You're like, "I have no idea." But that comment to me, like, just being able to share that experience with you guys, like, there's no other replacement for that. There are very few professions that give you the true honest relationship and the true understanding of consequences. Your actions have consequences and all these things. And at the end of the day, all we can do is prepare. And while we were prepared in a ton of those situations for success, and we did find success, Roop, your ball out of bounds at Huntington or whatever happened. I mean, there are so many scenarios that I forget results, I forget, passages of play. But just the interactions that I've had with players or that I've had with referees or other coaches, like, those things are the reasons why I'm still coaching and why I still enjoy it. There are ongoing relationships that, if I could tell you anything that I learned from Dave, is that he still gets phone calls on his birthday from players from the 80s. Like, if I could ever have a phone call on my birthday, it would be fantastic. And sometimes I do. Drake will text me every once in a while. But the relationships that he instilled then, those are still part of the culture that I want to make sure that Manchester soccer continues to grow. And Noah, if you and I have had frustration, Roop, you and I have had frustration, but both of you were at a point where you were able to communicate with our staff exactly what you're feeling, why you're feeling it, and then either we try and help solve it, or you're still frustrated a little bit, but at least we try to create some basis of communication to have that transparency. But without a relationship or relationships, you can't do that. So I think for the long answer, Malero-sized answer, relationships, 100%. Final answer.
I'm glad the two memories you remember of us are conceding crucial goals. So that's good.
Noah scored some pretty ridiculous goals in his career in training and in fantastic. You both had some very fantastic near goals in your career. Yes. And Luke, the other main memory that I have for you is your block against Transylvania in like the 3rd minute that allowed us to win that game. So yes, like there are many good memories, but I picked the hard ones, right? Those are the ones where you have to have that trust, that basis for a relationship. Like, no, I will never forget your face coming out of that game. And I'm just like, what happened? I'm like, okay, I'll allow it. Like, 2 years before that, I'd be like screaming your head off. But no, if you don't know, then there's no way that I could be tremendously upset with that. You earned the right to be in that position. Everything we were prepared for, and here we go. Same with Roop's clearances, same with, the red cards at Wisconsin Whitewater, all these different things that are running through my mind.
Well, and forget goals too. We were always more about the tackles that we had anyway. So that's more we cared about anyway.
Your tackle at Illinois College, still, I hear it every night. And then I hear the coach screaming at me, and I'm just like, clean tackle. So.
Well, and you talked about relationships, and like to me, nothing embodied like a great relationship with the team and coaching staff and everything than like the Jamaica trips or different study abroad trips that I could have gone on. So, what did the Jamaica trip mean for you? I know you went as a player, and then you've gone as a coach like multiple times, I believe. So, what does that embody for you?
Yeah, it's obviously part of the Manchester mission to serve, and I guess I didn't really understand before I had gone when I was a student. As Coach Good started to explain, hey, we're going to take this trip to Jamaica, you start to think like, all right, like beach, sand, soccer, hot weather, like it's just going to be really, really nice. And it was really nice, but it was not the, the luxury that you're thinking about. And, there's no better way to bond than to struggle through, getting together and doing these things together. So Coach Good had developed a ton of strong connections in the Jamaican community all over the island, partly due to his brother Ron having lived there for quite a while. And so we went, I went my sophomore year, I think, in college. And yeah, one of the greatest times of my life. Like from being woken up at 5 o'clock to a guy singing to his crops, and then me screaming like, shut up, because I thought it was somebody in the other door, to going to breakfast. And Lois is like, who was yelling profanities at, I don't remember what his Nigel or whatever his name was. And I'm just like, yeah, that's what I was like, I thought it was, John singing from the other dorm. And, one of my friends, Joe, has difficulty, he needs to use the restroom, have to eat pretty quickly. So we were driving up the Blue Mountains or whatever. And you guys, I don't know if we even took the trip to the coffee house, did we? No. Okay. So Blue Mountain Coffee is like, you drive just up constantly for, as you know, a 20-minute trip in Jamaica is really a 5-hour trip in Jamaica. So driving upwards, well, we had to stop and let him out to use the restroom. He finds this little side restroom. We didn't know this, but he's terrified of just farm animals. So there's like 30 chickens just chasing him to this bathroom, back and forth. Okay, so that's not even the worst part. We continue our drive. And as I believe we're like going around a turn, I'm in the back corner of the car, and I see a wheel just spin past us. As soon as I see that, our car drops like this. And there's no guardrails on these mountains. And so this wheel flies up, our car starts skidding. We are the third of 3 vans, so we're in the back. We didn't have cell phones at the time. So the other 2 continue up to the mountain, and we're just sitting there. Luckily, we didn't fall off the mountain. We just kind of stopped there the guy tried to, make the tire work. But some of those experiences, having to go through that together, I mean, it bonds you, being able to, live together for how many days, 20-ish days, 15, 16. It just makes you get frustrated with each other. It makes you learn things about each other. Those shared experiences are why I've always encouraged studying abroad. So as a player, I loved it. We slept through the earthquake in Haiti. Or was it the hurricane, I believe. We slept. No, it was earthquake, wasn't it? Yeah, I slept through the earthquake in Haiti, and I'm yelling at Grant, who's sleeping on a concrete bed next to me, and I'm yelling at him to stop shaking my bed, which is made of concrete and it can't move. And we both just fall back asleep. Wake up the next morning and see that, we'd felt the aftershock. So yes, as a player, one of my favorite experiences of all time. When I went back as an assistant coach, it was tough, right? I was put in such an odd spot to make sure the guys were making good decisions and make sure they're having a good time, learning what they need to learn, doing what they need to do, and then also make sure Dave and Lois were comfortable, with what is happening. And you guys know, in Jamaica, it's an amazing experience, but if you want to find trouble, you could probably go find trouble. And so it was weird for me as an assistant. Definitely probably didn't handle a few things as well as I should have in terms of just communication with the guys, my expectations, their expectations. And at that time, I was like still 23, 22. So it was difficult, trying to navigate that. But went back as a head coach. I think you guys had a good time. I still feel bad about it because it wasn't our trip, right? It wasn't my trip. And that's where I feel bad because I wasn't able to communicate clearly with, what we're doing, why we're doing certain things, how it's changing. But I'm so thankful that Dave got to show you guys that. I've had a couple alumni text me and say, hey, do you know where that waterfall is? Hey, do you know where this is? And I'm just like, I can find out. But those are things that you guys hopefully will be able to share with, people you love for the rest of your life, or go experience it again. Because the trip that you got was probably about 75% of what I got. There's still another part that I think, as the transition from me to Coach Good happened, you didn't get the full authentic Jamaica experience, which made you work for like 15 days straight in smoldering heat and doing cement work and, the stuff that the guys on the previous trip got to do and then our trip got to do as well. So right now, I don't know what the plan is. I know that the culture in the deaf community has changed a lot. So I don't think there are as many opportunities to go back, but definitely want to go back if we can.
I'm pretty sure there are a couple of guys on our team that would not have handled the 15 days of work very well, considering the amount of complaining that happened just when we were painting. So
yes, yeah, it's interesting to and that's a whole different topic. I'm not much older than you guys, and you know that, but the generational gaps are just super funny to watch. And the same goes for recruiting. Like, I can't get a kid to call me, but if I text them or like something on Twitter, they'll start a conversation. And so it's just, a unique dynamic that has developed, and we can talk about that another time.
Although you did leave me a pretty good message after you went to recruit me. Do you remember what you said? I pick up a message from Coach Corey and it says, hey, it's great to see you. You're a lot better than I thought you were. What does that mean? Did you think that I was going to be terrible, or you just?
Yeah, I had seen you and Nash, I think, at the state quarterfinals or semis or sectionals or semis. I remember we played. Yeah, and I guess for you, I just pictured a just pretty athletic guy that was just out there kicking the ball around, and it looked like you know what you were doing. And then I got recruited. I started recruiting Noah because he was playing with a friend of mine's brother, I believe. Yeah,
kind of. Yeah. Well, yeah. I think I scheduled a visit too, and then I canceled it or something. And you're like, hey, you probably like, hey, you should actually come and visit. I was like, okay.
And Noah came for at least one of the futsal events that we had, I believe.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, sorry, my bad. Like, just I try and be honest and also sarcastic and or witty sometimes, and I just fail a lot.
Now that I know you, it makes 100% sense.
Yeah,
but just hopefully.
Yeah, without a relationship, that would make no sense to most people. So
Yeah.
glad you somehow ended up in Manchester, because I remember hearing from like Coach Lawson that you were going there, and I'm just like, all right, sounds good. We'll make it work.
Todd and Andy did a good job of recruiting me. So
Yes, we have had some really good hosts. Todd, Andy. I think Todd, Andy, and Travis got stuck in the elevator with Nash. And
Yep.
I remember getting a FaceTime from Andy and being like, all right, Andy, like there's some lines that we need to draw right here. And I declined it. And then he called me again. He's like, no, coach, like seriously. And he said, hey, we're stuck in the elevator with Nash. I'm just like, guys, you shouldn't be in the elevator, first of all. Granted, there's stairs or an elevator. He's like, but what do we do? And I'm like, well, I'll call maintenance. And by the time that Colin Singer had gotten there, he had gotten them out, and maintenance wasn't even close to coming over yet. So yeah, we had some good hosts. The Bakers killed it.
They did. So I think maybe to kind of wrap things up before you have to get going, we'll end with some rapid fire questions. How's that sound?
Let's do it. How much time do I have to answer?
Just make
1
it
second.
no designated time.
All right.
Favorite
Wait, hold on. Let me get my mind right. Okay, I'm ready.
Favorite athlete of all time?
Vince Carter.
Favorite memory of that athlete?
The 2000 dunk contest, the 2000 dunk over French center at the Olympics. Yeah, that's probably it.
Favorite current Arsenal player?
Oh man, that's tough. Saka, right. He's killed it. Yeah, Saka's just seeing a young guy just step up and just absolutely outplay himself is insane to see him right now.
Messi or Ronaldo?
Oh yeah.
Ronaldo.
Yeah.
I know I should say Messi, but Ronaldo is just insane. They're both insane. We are privileged to watch both of them. Ronaldo is physically on a different level.
Would you rather have a game-winning 3 or a dunk?
Since I've already had one of those, I'd rather have the dunk.
Who's your coaching inspiration? Who do you look up to as a coach?
Tactically, probably Pep. Always trying to learn as much as I can from him. Character-wise, I've read a lot recently about Phil Jackson and some of the stuff that he had done with the Lakers and with the Bulls. Popovich is still, a really big inspiration. So, yeah, it's hard to find the character side of things. Arsene Wenger has always been a really big inspiration as well, from his Invincible days to the end of his Arsenal career.
If you could go to any sporting event in all time, like ever, which one would you want to go to?
So I remember driving to the YMCA in 8th grade to play an indoor soccer game and crying my eyes out because Xavier was losing to Duke in the Elite Eight when they had like JJ Redick, Luol Deng. I would love to be there for that game because I know that if I was there, we would have won. So 2004 Elite Eight, Xavier versus Duke basketball game, or the 2006 Champions League final, which Arsenal lost to Barcelona. I wasn't an Arsenal fan yet, but I'm convinced that if I was there, they probably would have lost still, but it would have been fun.
So if Messi joins our team from our senior year, how far do we go in the national tournament?
Or do we make it?
We make it. Yep.
Oh.
I'd say Elite Eight. I'd say eventually we'd meet some team that just rakes his Achilles and he's out. Like, I hate saying it, but we all face those teams eventually. And if he's surviving La Liga, Division III soccer, man, that's a different world. The referees as well. You just never know what you're gonna get.
I picture just like the whole back line, just man marking him across the whole back, like the whole field, just putting 5 on him or something.
Yeah,
like that.
I mean that's I've always thought about that. If we could just have, one player, can one player win a game? Maybe Messi can. It's Messi is not just one player. He's like 11-1. But yeah, no, it's interesting. What do you think? Turn it back on you.
So this is a question that we have a long-standing debate with Alex about, and I think we win the whole thing. I think even with the attention that he draws, maybe somebody else can get freed up or something like that. But I mean, it's Messi. I think you have to.
There's been people saying that we wouldn't even get to the like tournament or like
Yeah,
we
I
beat
think-
like Hanover. I would hope.
I think your junior year team, I'd put as a national champion.
All right.
No disrespect to your senior year team, but I think the junior year team, I'd give a little bit more.
All right.
Sammy, baby. Sammy and Messi just linking up all over the field. Just making dreams happen. Yeah.
Celebrations everywhere.
So, oh my gosh. Who was I talking? I was talking about that with somebody. I think one of our freshmen was like, Coach, what's your favorite celebration? What are you gonna do? Can we do a training session about celebrations? I was like, all right, let me call Sammy. You know, we had a whole team celebration against Earlham. Oh man, that is one of my favorite memories. And honestly, circling back, baby, to relationships. Without Sammy's relationship with so many guys on the team to do whatever celebration, the little at the end of Earlham, like, yeah, that is, and somebody, I think Deb caught it on picture. Oh my gosh, it's one of my favorite pictures of all time. It's so funny. Okay, sorry, keep going.
If you could have dinner with one athlete, who would it be?
Oh yeah, this is weird. I'd love to have dinner with Xavi, the Spanish center mid who's now I think he's in like a Saudi team. Yeah, I think I'd just love to have, he always seems super happy, super easygoing. And I think I have great vision, but that dude sees everything, knows everything, having played under Pep, having played with Pep, yeah, I would just love to have dinner with him. I thought about other people, but no, I think he would be a pretty fun guest.
Yeah, I think that'd be it. Well, I think those are all the important questions we had for you. We appreciate your time. Thanks for hopping on.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Best of luck as the season starts.
Thank you.
Hey guys, hope you enjoyed our episode and our conversation with Coach Corey. Tune in next Wednesday for a new release.
Thank you.